In November 1962, an American intelligence officer stood on a freezing street in Moscow, reaching behind a cast iron radiator to retrieve a small matchbox. It was a prearranged distress signal indicating an imminent Soviet military attack. But there was no attack. The signal was a trap, and KGB agents swarmed the handler. The Russian asset who supposedly triggered that distress signal had already been captured, having just supplied the intelligence that kept the United States and the Soviet Union from annihilating each other. To understand why Soviet counterintelligence went to such lengths to capture a single American operative, we have to go back and look at the intelligence that made this specific informant the most valuable asset in Moscow. Meet Colonel Oleg Penkovsky. He was a deeply embedded officer inside the Soviet Union's military intelligence agency, known as the GRU. Because of his senior rank, Penkovsky held security clearances that gave him direct, unimpeded access to the Soviet military's most heavily guarded missile development programs. In 1960, he reached out to Western intelligence. Given the codename Hero by the CIA, he volunteered to pass these state secrets directly to the United States and Britain. By choosing to stay and spy from within Moscow instead of defecting, he gave American and British analysts their first accurate, unfiltered look inside the Soviet arsenal. To capture this data, Penkovsky used a Monoxby camera. Small enough to fit in a palm, it allowed him to covertly photograph thousands of classified military documents. The resulting files, codenamed Ironbark, contained the exact operational field manuals for every deployed Soviet missile. Moving the film out of the country required a quiet network of dead drops, secret locations where items could be left and retrieved on scene, and rapid handoffs to civilian contacts right under the KGB's nose. Roll by roll, this fragile physical pipeline successfully mapped the true scope of Soviet military power. In October 1962, U-2 spy planes photographed suspicious clearings in Cuba, triggering a global panic over Soviet missiles near the US. By cross-referencing these aerial photos with the Ironbark manuals, analysts positively identified the exact capabilities of the hidden hardware. This chart directly compares the massive intercontinental ballistic missile stockpile the West feared against the actual number of operational missiles that existed. Penkovsky's documents proved the Soviet long-range nuclear program was highly defective, and their leadership was bluffing. Armed with concrete data showing Soviet vulnerabilities, President John F. Kennedy could afford to hold his ground. He stared down Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev without resorting to a preemptive military strike. The crisis de-escalated, primarily because the United States held an asymmetric intelligence advantage, built entirely on stolen data from one embedded kernel. But Penkovsky's operation was already collapsing. A mole inside the British government had reported his civilian contacts back to Soviet counterintelligence. The KGB raided his apartment and discovered his espionage equipment. On October 22nd, precisely at the peak of the missile crisis, he was arrested. Over the next 11 days, interrogators subjected him to intense torture, extracting the specific protocols he used to communicate with his CIA handlers. The KGB then weaponized those protocols. They forced their captive to send his ultimate distress signal, the one warning of an imminent Soviet attack, to lure American intelligence out into the open. The Pushkinskaya street matchbox functioned as a lure, the direct result of communication protocols extracted from a broken man. The captured handler was quickly deported, permanently severing the West's best intelligence pipeline in Moscow. Penkovsky faced a heavily publicized Soviet show trial. He was convicted of treason and executed on this day in history, May 16, 1963. His intelligence established strategic parity, a condition where both superpowers understood their actual military limits. His data turned the Soviet arsenal into a measurable metric that both sides could finally calculate. By exposing the reality of Soviet military capabilities, Penkovsky established the strategic clarity that stabilized the remainder of the Cold War.